Welcome back, everyone. 皆さん、おかえりなさい。今日は、71日目です。It is day 71. We are 2 or 3 days away from level up day. So, pretty much 60-ish. Yeah, all the way up till Sunday, which is after level up day. So, smooth sailing, pretty short sessions until then. Let's get into it. So if I recall, yesterday we had a few questionable things. Thread, top hat, sewing them together, they become a group or an association, right? And it's human. Uh,
小学生
小学生 末
末
the end.
Natsu.
夏
必死。
必死
切り取る。
切り取る
雪
雪
学校。
学校 self reason since
囲碁。
囲碁 what was this? 2 yogurts? 強い oh yeah, the 2 yogurts with the steroids.
強い。
強い
札。
札 you? Left. What was left? Norwal. Mouth. Yeah, that's you. What the heck was left? Oh. Left had a construction. Oh, left is saw. right? Yeah, you or ooh. What's this up?
四国
Goku. You. You.
自由
Oh no, it's you. Okay, it's you.
年末
年末を
以上
以上7日 Yes.
7日
7日交通ね
交通
交通うんWhat went wrong here? Definition? Oh, no, wait. This was from... I think the definition problem was Hanzahiro's problem, right? Mon? Boon and Mon? Itsumatsu.
月末
Huh? Ah. Wait. Yeah. Goku.
曲
Goku. Kyoku. So. Hello again, Hooks. People. Fish. Yo. Bird. Another zoo. Certainly. Narazu. Or precisely. Still certain. Certainly works. It certainly works. Without exception, always. Definitely. Whoops. Certainly. Ana.
必ず
Narazu. Ikai. Ikai. Ikai.
以外
Ikai. Okay. Izen. Isen. Isen.
以前
Isen. Yellow. I. Ika. Ika. Right, Ika.
以下
Skeru. Skeru.
つける
Ooh. Itachi. Words, self, record. Otokonoko.
男の子
Tsuitachi. I. Tsuitachi.
1日
White. Haku? Yes, haku. Record key. Sweet. Can't really disclose the state, but I'm from the northeast of the United States. And then Satsu. I mean, I'm technically from 4 states, but very dependent on what you mean by from. But still in the northeast.
千円札
Uh,
床
木
weak point. Jaku. 弱点.
弱点
Reason plus reason. Still reason, but was there anything else? What synonyms do they give? Motive and excuse? Okay. Fine. Do you
理由
do you stay hard? All right. I'll try to stay hard. Thanks. Earth reason. Yes. Uh. Second, eighth. Iri. Iri.
チリ
Iri. Iri. 8. Yogurt. Right? 8. We had yogurt. Yoka. Or is it yoka? I immediately changed because the kana doesn't look okay. Probably this. One of the exceptions. Yo, but no. So what? We have ice. We have 2 exceptions. 3 exceptions. I'm feeling at least 3 exceptions. This one's not one of them. Could have been one of them. But yogurt lines up with yo.
8日
Vocal.
高校
Back. Boku. Kokonotsu. Kokonoka. Right. Kokonoka.
9日 夏休み
Yasumi.
この辺
Onohen. Oh, where did you guys go for this book?
高い
Akai.
弱い
Yowai. Powerful.
協力
Yoryoku. You guys go straight to Hun? Maybe. Okay. Teach. Hmm. Jinrigaku.
心理学
Jinrigaku. Jinrigaku. Mirai.
未来
Mirai. Okay, Mirai. Jinri.
心理
Jinri. Mirai. Come from. Not yet. Oh yeah, not yet. Come. All right. What time is it? 6:33. We're not waiting for that one. Okay. That's end of our thing. We still got 2 days, 3 days. Probably gonna be a 3-day wait before the next level. Right. Whoops. So these are going to be pretty chill until then, as per our usual WaniKani schedule. Okay. Right. Wing, box, lack, stamp, husband, clan, boat, fish, yellow, black, circumference, table, temple, gate, self, feature, top hat, bird, elephant. Go over our reads. We don't need the mnemonics anymore, since we're on third repeat. Okay. So. Ga. Yuka. Itsu. Shi. Yu. Tatsu. Meme. En. Tsu. I. Jitsu. Itsu. Tsu. Tsu. Hitsu. Mi. Matsu. Ko. Zo and Sho. Natsu. Gyaku. Ji. Kami. Akami. I. Tsu. Ko. Hyo. Hyo. That one's a little weak. Yo. D. Kumi. It's Kumi. Yes. Yeah, works. Kumi. Then. Shu. Yuki. Gyo. Cho. Hi. Toku. U. E. What HSK level would you say you're at? You're starting Anki flashcards for Chinese so that you're ahead of class, by the way. That's kind of nice. HSK? Probably HSK 4. I think I know the vast majority from 1 through 3 now. If you're talking about vocabulary, since you mentioned Anki. In terms of vocabulary, I would say HSK 4. In reading, I don't actually know the words I know by hearing. So that's kind of a hand wavy thing. Because there are words that would end up in various areas. But I think in terms of like coverage, we're gonna say, for the most part, I can't think of reliable words from HSK 4 and on. There's spotty things like, I don't know, insurance, government, politicians, news reports, car crashes. There are things that like I have to know with my parents. So those are the things that might show up later. But in terms of being able to resolve most things, HSK 1 through 3 is enough most of the time. You might probably have heard that with other languages too. For the most part, being conversational, quote unquote, being conversational is a foundation with the basic sentence structures and whatnot to resolve problems. Oh yeah. In terms of learning though, like reading, the only way I'm answering that question nowadays is how much I can read, because I couldn't read anything outside of like numbers because of mahjong or something. So I couldn't read any characters at all. I was completely illiterate. How's Japanese doing? Would you say that you're at a conversational level? I have enough writing practice and like speaking practice for myself personally that I could hold a conversation with someone. Yeah. To hold a conversation. Whether that's a smooth conversation, that's up to other people's opinions. I like when I talk to people, it's not like I don't stutter or have problems when I started talking. English is a different story because I do the same thing with English. Only it's gotten to this point because it's time, right? Time and practice. So, for example, this very topic that we're talking about and the question you're asking, I could say a lot, like and filler words quite a bit. However, I've answered the question many times before, so I was able to practice and work on what I would say. So then those ideas can become more and more complex over time. In terms of Chinese, for example, in terms of Mandarin, my parents and I, the conversations get more and more complex because the problem comes up, or the thing we have to talk about comes up more and more often. So, for example, it's about tax time now. So about 2 months ago, I talked to my parents about taxes, largely because I handle some of the tax work. That's kind of how I go about developing talking. I know this is probably going to sound like a cliche or possibly a hot take, but the emphasis on pronunciation, vocal clarity, I think that's overrated. It's very hyper oriented towards something that can happen over time when you're focusing on using your language. But generally speaking, oftentimes if you take a piece of paper in front of you, ask yourself what type of task you do quite often and what type of expressions and words you would express, and then go find examples of them. That creates a different way of going about it too. I know that people like immersion and learning from the input, and that is still a gold standard for a lot of people. In fact, there's people who almost religiously believe in this. How I went about these things were a combination of both. I often get ahead and consciously plan on being conversational so I can lead conversations in the future. Like, ask my parents, did you do the taxes yet? Did you get the tax paper yet? How do I say W2 in Fujianese? What is my native language? My mother tongue is Fujianese, Enzo. My common language of choice is English. I live in the United States, so the common language is English. It would be difficult now to answer which language I was exposed to first. I most definitely probably have heard Fujianese first in my life, but Mandarin came second. Mandarin and Cantonese came second. I don't know which one came first. It's probably Mandarin. In kindergarten, my parents used to live in a place in the United States where kindergarten was bilingual. They were bilingual school, so you had English and Mandarin put together. However, immediately after that, my parents decided we should try to go to a better place. So we moved out, and then I was placed in a monolingual English school, but it was still like low socioeconomic place. Then eventually we moved to another place when I was 13, and they spoke exclusively English. And then after that, because of the English thing, my first like secondary language that I acquired was actually Spanish. And a week ago, I just started up seeing what I remembered from 20 years ago. And it's largely what I expected. Like, so I'm going over Duolingo because I like how fun Duolingo is. And then we're covering the vocabulary. I think my grammar is still intact. So it's probably around B1. I'm going to conservatively say B1. And Duolingo covers most things up to B2. So we're having a little bit fun in Duolingo. In terms of Mandarin, I say my hearing and listening skills are whatever the analogous level is for B1 and B2. Most of the time when I'm watching programming, I'm a heritage speaker, and a heritage listener. So most of the time when I'm watching Chinese, it's not like I think about what they're saying. I just know what they're saying kind of feeling, it's the heritage speak thing. But when I go to produce it, it's terrible. That's why I push back on people who admittedly, Stephen Krashen and his input theory, his input hypothesis, lots of people love this stuff. I totally agree. It works really, really well with extraneous exceptions. Like outliers. I am one of the outliers, so I'm going to push back a little bit. Not that I'm saying other people shouldn't or should. For me, it's a pushback because I'm diaspora, and a lot of times I disagree with input. Active input is the only solution, the thing to create proper output and leading conversations. For myself, yes, I can watch Mandarin content all the time, which is what I do, and I understand sufficiently, but I can't produce it. It's not great. Like, as much as I want, there is some level of conscious attempts and practice, especially when you're not considering that the world is different now. I think it is definitely still true that you can get by with the idea that you can immerse due to obligation. So that's like moving to another country, being around your parents, right? Like my parents are my source of Chinese. So that extent creates a lot of input that's great. However, if you do not consciously or incentivize yourself to output, like writing out what you would say and rehearse and practice some output, I agree with most people who say immersion, the input is the longer period. Absolutely. Like for input, you need a substantial, arguably disproportionate amount of time for input. Let's say it takes 10 years of input to finally be comfortable to doing output. And then most people agree, which I agree too, that the input takes much, much longer than the output in terms of producing language, like speaking and writing. However, even a small percentage of that large input is a lot of time across a person's lifetime. So for example, if I technically had over 30 years of input from my parents and from programming, and a small percentage of the time is like 10 years of practice, I'm not going to say it's a small amount of time, which a lot of people say which is best. You know, when you think of which is more, which is best, one day more is still more than. So we're talking about scalar stuff. I would say a third of the time still is ascribed to consciously practicing output in order to get your input. So how do I usually respond to people in conversation? I speak and respond and write in English, but I read Japanese, Mandarin, and I can't read. Fujianese is not written, by the way, and Spanish. So that's what happens when you get a lot of input, and you can probably output by then from all the input, but without practice, your elegance, that whole feeling of conversational that people like, is still deficient. And you can have tons of immersion with characters in your face all the time and still be illiterate like me. However, acquiring it is to make a disclaimer, acquiring it takes way less time. I totally agree with that. When you get that immersion, right? When you get that immersion, it reduces the amount of time to do all the other things. But those things are not optional. I have people who read so much, like English, right? They can tell me so much about these complicated stories and whatnot. And when they go to speak, it's like night and day. Their articulation, their eloquence in their writing, and the way they write did not translate to their speaking abilities, which still takes a lot less time when you have all the input. But the answer is pretty much all the above, right? So whenever I say I'm conversational, I often go to the bottom line and say I can hold a conversation. What is that going to look like? It's probably going to look like a bunch of English mixed with a bunch of Chinese and so on, because I go as quickly as I can, and then eventually with that practice, things fill in. So sometimes I'd be telling my parents like, "你taxes 交了冇呀？你那件你拿我去 tax 拿阿冇記錄個啊？我定那冇記錄我都靠古尼叫攞一債記錄get chori," right? So you can hear that I use the word tax because I didn't immediately remember what the word tax is. So I use any language that I have available to me to fill in those gaps. And over time, if you're incentivized to using those things, you eventually okay, I keep hitting the word tax. I need to figure out what the word tax is. That's kind of how I go about it. So it's a combination of that whole fluent, intuitive feeling mixed with a third of conscious, active, wanting to learn something. So if you don't have both, in my opinion, you can become fluent, like you can still feel very fluent and whatnot. However, to get there might require a lot more self-dedication, right? A lot more like encouragement. And that's one of the lower emphasized problems or potential problems in the input hypotheses, in my opinion, in Krashen's work, where what if the person is just not incentivized, obligated, or motivated to do that? And we live in the world of the internet. So before, it might not have been a big problem because usually you didn't have choice to avoid everything. Nowadays, when we're talking about people learning language and like adults learning language, they're choosing, even kids, they're choosing to learn a language. Otherwise, they can actually default to English or their national language. So even more so now, I believe one of his theorems or one of his like parts of his input hypotheses should move to the top. The reason why I say that is because that's what most of the products are targeting now. The products are targeting the barrier for self-obligation. How much does it cost? How long does it take? How to incentivize yourself to want to be interested in using the target language. So that's probably what I would emphasize when it comes to how well someone knows a language. Then because ultimately I think there's one thing the vast majority of language learners in the language community, the greater language learning community would agree on, is the feeling that using a language becomes effortless, right? That feeling when, oh, I don't know all the words, but I know enough words to figure out any other word that comes down the line. And since I'm a heritage speaker, I don't know of any other feeling than that. So that's probably one thing that I would have to constantly talk about over time when someone asks me what my language level is, because I don't actually know. I can't unlearn how to learn using more than one language. So it's kind of difficult to get into the headspace of someone who's like, well, I can't possibly take in more Japanese or Mandarin if it's not all in Japanese or Mandarin, right? So that's kind of a really big asterisk to this. What I'm doing here is closer to how I feel about language. It's the most readily practiced way of learning language. And I would be very, very hesitant to suggest this to anyone or even most people, largely because they did not grow up learning that way. And then when you try to acquire a new thing, you have to keep in mind, hey, I'm not saying it's impossible for you or highly improbable for you to do this. Keep in mind that it takes like 10 to 20 years before this becomes normal for you, right? If you're someone who's choosing your second major, not like second target language, but when you get your second native language, right? And that might be a lot of people still. Maybe like from a country that has two languages, like a national language that's different from the common language being English a lot of times, and then a national language or something else. Those people, even within that subset, there are individuals who choose to prefer one language over the other because of their environment. Their local environment might say, yeah, English is fine. That's it. Like, you're fine. So then it starts gravitating towards a preferential language. I do not have a preference between Fujianese and English, largely because it's mandatory that I speak to my parents in Fujianese. And that is a language that is not being taught written. So it's even more obligatory that I know how to speak it. Does that interfere with like Mandarin? Absolutely. Is interference bad or good? I don't think of interference as bad, largely because I go back to the idea that rarely do I learn thinking about one language. A lot of times when I encounter like an English where I'm like, if I had to express this to my parents, how would I have to express this to my parents? Like, I don't really know. Then you come up with like HSK 1 through 3 versions of how to describe this, right? Just a thought. I do want to make it clear that I don't represent a majority body. So, and also make it clear that I think other people can learn this way too. I don't think they actively choose. Tienes opiniones muy interesantes sobre el aprendizaje. Ooh, I don't know how to where the accent is in that de idiomas. De nada. Yeah. I mean, it is interesting opinions, right? About the understanding of language. Yeah. I don't know how to reply at the moment, but I understand what you said in Spanish. Actually, Enzo, were you here because I started Spanish? Is that how that works? Yeah, if I had to translate, right, interpret what you said, you have an interesting opinion. You have a very interesting opinion on the understanding or the learning of language learning, right? So I wouldn't be able to conversationally reply in an elegant way in Spanish. No. Wait. No. Sorry, there might be some stream delay, so I don't know. I say a lot of things in a small amount of time, so I'm not sure. All right, we're gonna switch gears though. That's a wrap for WaniKani and Japanese today. Yeah, if you're gonna watch this later, arigatou gozaimasu. Right, arigato. For those who are only interested in Japanese, minasan mata ne. And we're gonna go straight into Hanzo Hero today because I'm feeling pretty fresh. Okay. Give me a sec.